Welcome to the Austin Zaback Show, where every guest is meant to leave listeners inspired and motivated, propelling them to pursue their passions and live up to their full potential.
You've been doing great. Then all of a sudden you get to the pros, and now everyone's great. And now what happens is everyone at some point loses their confidence. It doesn't matter who that person is in sports or business. I stay in my lane, meaning I only talk about the things that I'm confidently gifted in. Hard becomes less hard when you keep putting yourself in tough positions. The game's never over. It's never over. You still have so much within you. There's more within you. You're worth more. Like I said at the beginning, you have 100% bounce back rate. So you've overcome everything hard you've already been through in your life. Create, prepare, work on it, stay consistent, and then hone your gift really well. So then when you're called, an opportunity comes, you're ready.
Welcome back to another episode of the Austin Zaback Show. Today we have a very special guest, somebody that I've been looking to get on for quite a while. She just wrote a book. She is a best-selling author. I actually knew her for the longest time, and you probably know her by Coach Dar. Yeah. Her real name is Darlene Santor, and I don't have the accent, so I just have to keep it simple there. But, you know, Coach Dar, you've achieved some unbelievable things in your life. You've also been through some unbelievable adversity and challenges. And I'm excited to dive into some of that, but just a couple things that you've achieved. Number one, you're a board certified occupational therapist, which is really cool. Yeah. And you've been a coach or a consultant to all 4 major leagues, which I found fascinating. I knew about the Phoenix Suns and the fact that you were, coaching a lot of the players there. But until recently, I didn't know that you did the NHL, the NFL, the MLB, as well as the MLS, PGA, professional boxing. I mean, it just goes on, and man, we have so much to talk about, so I'll keep the intro really short. And I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks so much. I've been looking forward to this for a long time, so I'm glad we finally coordinated it and I could be here.
Well, thank you again, and I kind of just want to get started by, obviously, I read your book and I listened to it, by the way, too. So I'm not a huge reader, so I skimmed through it and then I listened to the audiobook. And what a phenomenal book.
Thank you.
You wrote it in, so how long did it take you to actually complete the book? I know it released in February, right?
It did. They actually gave me this is the shortest an author's ever gotten. I had to get my first submission in 4 months from the time they said go and sign the publishing deal. And that usually you get a year.
Oh my gosh.
I was in the middle of obviously coaching executives and players. So I would work all day and night because sports is at night. And then I would write from probably about 12 until 4 a.m. because it was when it was quiet. So this was a passion, obviously, in mine, but it was condensed in such a short time. That's not normally 4 months, usually get longer. But I figured, you know what, it's probably good for me because it forces me to get it done to get to the finish line.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like you're known for putting a lot on your plate.
Yes, very much.
Which we'll get into, obviously. And I really want to kind of dive into, a bit about your story, right? And, for anybody watching that doesn't know, obviously now you've achieved some amazing accolades, but you really did that, from my perspective, as a result of the adversity that you went through, kind of, to a degree, right? I mean, having 3 strokes, which not many can say that they've been through that type of adversity, to all other types of adversity that you've gone through, right? So maybe let's just go back in time a little and kind of walk the listener through some of your journey of how you got to the point where you were able to write a book and do all the things that you've been able to do.
Well, I would have never picked the topic of wanting to write about bouncing back. I joked around. I said, my next book is going to be on abundance. But if I look back, I grew up in Connecticut, a big Italian family, and my mom was a barber. My dad was a tool and die maker. We didn't have a lot, but our Italian family, everyone was over our house on Sundays. And so we all just helped each other. And my mom early on had her first triple bypass heart surgery at 40. So as a young kid, I saw my mom have to bounce back from such adversity. I mean, she lost her mom when she was 11, her dad 2 months before her wedding. But this woman was resilient, not knowing how much of her resilience would help me and also the work that I do. But I just saw a family that never gave up, and they always bounced back. And then I went to school. My grandfather had a stroke, and I saw this therapist walk in and help him with his cognition, his thinking, his way. And I thought, that's it. And so I went to school to become an occupational therapist. And then when I got out, I was working on a neuro unit. So I was taking care of stroke and traumatic brain injured patients. And this is key because these patients were the worst of the worst. So major car accident, stroke, brain tumor, and they were told they would never walk again, talk again, and come back. And I would tell my patients all the time, like, we're not owning that. They say no and they gave you no hope, we give you hope. And so I would work with them cognitively. Neuroscience and neuropsychology is my background, and help them bounce back. Well, that's where I started my career, helping hundreds and hundreds of people bounce back. And then at 25, that's when I had my first stroke, when I went to go see a chiropractor, and they manipulated my neck and they ripped the artery to my brain. And I didn't know I was bleeding in the brain. I just went to go get adjusted because I'd hurt my back. I go home. I'm married at the time, married my college sweetheart. We had just bought the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting. I'm like, man, I'm thriving in my career. I just started. You know, I'm just going to start a family. I'm married. Like, everything's going great. And then, boom. And this setback hits. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're telling me now, fast forward, they tell me that I ended up having a stroke because when that ripped the artery, it was bleeding in my brain. But by the time they found it, it was too late. So they tell me at that moment, you could die any day. And so if you do, they're like, don't cough too hard, don't run, all these things don't do. And I'm like, wait a minute. One, I'm 25. Two, this is exactly what my patients hear all the time. Like, it's so glim, and it's just like this dreary future. I was like, I don't accept this. So
Wow.
I just was like, well, and they're like, Dar, if you do something, it could push this clot, you could die. And I was like, well, if I could die any day, guess what? I've lost all fear. Do you think I care about, like, what happens if this doesn't work out? I'll try again.
Yeah.
Do I care about what other people think if I'm doing the right thing? No. So you get this, like, it started to get this spark in me where I wanted to live life to the fullest, which I already did as a kid. Now I really did as an adult. And it just threw me into wanting to make such a difference in this world. And so I went back to school for business. I wanted to fix healthcare, ran multiple companies. Like, my first company was 28 years old. I was president of a healthcare company. I didn't know what I was doing per se, but I figured it out. All to say, along this journey, I wish I could say that was my only stroke, but as you said, I ended up having 3 strokes. And my last one was just 3 or 4 years ago, and that was my worst one.
Really?
But what I want to say here is the reason I got to this book is because from watching my family, going through what I went through, helping everyone go what they got, help them get through what they went through. I started my own practice in 2008 when the recession hit, people were losing their money, losing their homes, depression, suicide. I was like, hold on. Like, this is a reframe in your mindset. What I was doing in the hospital was a lot harder, so I shifted it, moved all of my skills outside the hospital walls and business walls, and started helping people individually. I started speaking for free, by the way. My father's like, you have no clients and no business plan. What are you doing? You're leaving a very lucrative, because by that point I was running 4 companies. I was living the American dream, and I was like, this isn't working. And I was really called at that point to serve people in a different way. And that's when I started my practice. And that's when I started helping, really, peak performers started to come to me and saying, like, I know I'm going to be probably the next CEO, or it's an athlete that's going to move forward, but they're like, something might be blocking me. I need to bounce back from something. And that's where this started. And so when it comes time to write this book, I was actually writing a different book. It was called Awakening Greatness. And then I had my 3rd stroke, and it stopped everything. And I was about to give up on it. And my agent called me and said, why are you putting God in the corner? And I said, what are you saying? She's like, you are meant to get a book out there. You have to keep going. And I said, but what am I going to do? Honestly, I couldn't read. I couldn't write. I mean, the stroke affected me that much.
Wow.
And she's like, you got to get back to do what you're doing. So I started to do all my own rehab myself that I used to do with my patients.
I don't know if you know this, but the majority of the views that we get are from people that are not subscribed. So do me a huge favor and subscribe if you like the podcast so far. Smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, and let's just go ahead and get back to the interview.
And then it came to me when my literary agent came and said, the common theme is you help everyone bounce back. What are the tools? And I had already bounced back faster this last stroke than all the others, because I used the principles that I put in this book on myself, and I put them into play. And so I will tell you that these are principles I used for myself. These are principles I use with top professional players, CEOs, and this was supposed to be a leadership book. And while it is, it's the people's book.
Yeah.
Everyone could benefit from learning how to build mental skills and resiliency now. So when the hits come, you bounce back faster.
Yeah. You know what I love about the idea of bouncing back, right, is that it automatically assumes that we're going to fall, right? Like we're going to get knocked down, you know, because that is the reality of the world that we live in, right? I mean, you know, no matter what you're trying to do, especially if you're trying to do something great, something phenomenal, right? You will fall. It's not a matter of if, it's simply a matter of when, right? And the difference, I think, between, you know, in what I've read in your book, and really just in studying, not only being a podcaster and a business person myself, but in reading your book and talking to you, is the idea that really it all boils down to, can you bounce back and how quickly can you do it, right?
Yes.
And that really is the measurement of how quickly you can achieve your goals, you know?
That's the thing. I wish I could say to people, it's going to be as smooth as could be. There's no more problems. You've done your work in this world. I can't. We are all going to face setbacks, and they're in different forms. I mean, I've now lost both my parents. It might be loss of a loved one. It might be a health scare. It might be financial. It might be a job change, your child, something, even just as simple as, honestly, you just know some days that are just tough. You're going to build the skills so that the tough doesn't hit you as hard. It's kind of how I equate this is I put everyone in the cold plunge, because when you get in the cold plunge, it's cold at first. And the first thing your body wants to do is get out. But once you train going in there consistently, you now win over your mind. Where it goes, here we go. I know she's going to get in. There's no getting out. We're just going to sit in this and breathe and get through it. That's what this book and that's what doing mental work does every day. Building your mental fitness is it trains you like the cold plunge, but for life.
Yeah.
So when the hits come, yes, it stinks. As I put, embrace the suck. It sucks. It's hard, but you go, I've been here before, maybe something a little different, but I know as of right now, everyone listening, you have 100% bounce back rate. Anything hard you've ever went through, you got through, just like you will again. The only people that didn't get to the other side is because they gave up.
Yeah.
So as long as you keep getting up, and I know there's days that you think, I don't know how I'm going to do this, you just muster enough energy for the next hour.
Yeah.
And the next hour. Just like in Navy SEAL training, they don't think about how it's going to be at the end of the month. All they think about is how do they get through the next hour, and those are the ones that make it through. Same with our life.
I love that so much. You know, and you're a woman of God, correct me if I'm
Yes.
wrong? Okay, I'm a man of God. You know, what are the odds, right, that you're an occupational therapist, right? And your role, your job up until that point is to help people get through having a stroke and learning to do the basic things again and getting back into society for then to you have to go through the very thing that you become equipped to, you know, help other people with, right? And I guess my question is, you know, I think a lot of times, and I've spent quite a bit of time thinking and researching, you know, like as a man of God, we're called to help people, to serve people, to relate to people, right? And you know, I heard a saying somewhere along the way, you know, the best person to help somebody stop using drugs is a drug addict, somebody who stopped using drugs at one point, right? Because if you can't relate to them, if you haven't been through what they've been through, or been through some level of adversity at the level that they're going through, then they're not going to be able to relate to you, right? And how much like looking back, I mean, I think you even mentioned it in your book, right? Where you're like, what are the odds that all of that crazy stuff happened to you? Have you put any thought into that at all?
I did many a times. Originally, when it first happened too, I was like, really, God? I was like, why do I have to go through this? Like, I'm the one that helps them. And then I stopped, and this came to me later on. This came when I really started my own practice because it really was a calling. My faith gotten deeper at that point, and I really heard this drop your nets and follow. And it was to lead in a way that was really going to help people. I want to teach people how to fish. I don't want them to always rely on me. I want them to be able to have the skills. And I thought, well, how could I possibly have done that or do this if I didn't go through it myself? I had to go through the adversity. And then even beyond that, I think, well, gosh, if Jesus had to carry a cross, and bear such hardship, who am I to think that I wouldn't?
Yeah.
We all are. And we're all going to have to go through some struggle. But that's the thing. We didn't come here in this world for ourselves. We literally didn't. We didn't come here so we could acquire all the things that we want. We came here because we have all a gift and a talent in this world. And if we use our gifts and our talents to serve people, we all rise. We all show up. We all make the world better. But we need all of us to show up. We need all of us to use our gifts, and we need all of us to shift our mindset from me to we, where we're using it for the betterment of others, not so we could just acquire. If you acquire things, that's a blessing, but that's not why you came here.
Sure.
You came here because you have a mission, and your mission is to be the best that you can so that you could show up to this world to help others.
Yeah, I love that. There's so much I want to unpack here. One of the things that I'm thinking about is just the idea that people go through. I think I've seen people that'll pray for a particular outcome, or they'll pray to have a particular lifestyle, or whatever it might be. I pray to eventually be on, stage and help people, or whatever, right? And then we get faced with a test, right? A piece of adversity, not realizing in the moment that the test will be our testimony.
Absolutely.
And then we wonder when we're in the valley, why me, right? And do you have any advice? And obviously, I want to get into like the actual, and obviously we can't get into the entire thing, but I want to get into some of the actual steps in a minute. But do you have any advice for somebody maybe watching right now where they're in a valley? Maybe it's addiction. Maybe they lost a family member, whatever. And on the other side of that valley is the next mountaintop, right? But how do they change their thought process in that moment in time, in your opinion?
Great question. Here's the thing. Just like the first chapter where it says embrace the suck, when you're in the valley, I'm not going to come up to you and say, don't worry, buddy, it's going to be okay. Tomorrow's a better day. In the moment that it just happened, say you lost a loved one. In that moment, I'm just going to sit there and say, I know this hurts. I know this is painful. And I know this is not how we wanted things. I love you and I'm here with you. And we're going to get through this. Let's just sit for a minute. Tell me what you're feeling. The point is, and you could do this for yourself. So accept what is right there. The moment you can embrace it and accept it, then eventually you could deal with it. The moment you don't accept it, you cannot deal with it. So I need you to accept where we are, feel it, tag all the emotions of it. And then this is an important part. Say for the example is you lost your job or you didn't get the position. Do not put a period where God intended a comma, meaning that incident doesn't mean the end. It's just a pause and it's a redirection. And you have to go back to understanding the job might have changed. You might have lost a loved one. Something might have happened, but you did not lose your skills and talents. So when you understand that you didn't lose your talent that's inside you, what's within you, you could win again. And I get people to remember that there is a fire still in that. We just have to light it. And once we remind ourselves that there is still all this knowledge, experience, gifts. Look I've had strokes. I've lost both my parents. I've gone through divorce. I've left everything to start it. But no one took away my gifts and my talents, right? I still get to show up to this world going, where do my talents meet the world's needs? Let me show up there. Then the fire's lit. Now it's not hopeless, it's hopeful. So when I get people to lean into this and take them through these steps of, there's so much in you. This setback makes you think that it's over. It makes you doubt yourselves. It makes you think that all the naysayers and everyone, they're true. No, it's not. It's just a pause, and it's a refinement time to start to see your real character. Because that is the test. We could have faith in the good days. That's easy. Faith in the tough days, confidence in the tough days, belief in the tough days, that's real grit. And that's where we start showing who we are as leaders and people. And that's what gives other people hope when they see us make it through what should have set us back for good. We come back better than ever.
Sure. I love that so much. You talk about embracing the suck, and in your book, it's actually like the first step, right?
Yes.
If embracing the suck is the first step in bouncing back, what is it that most people do? What's the opposite of embracing the suck?
Not embracing it and denying avoiding it, pushing it under the carpet, not dealing with the pain. Say it's someone who did something that they actually brought on themselves. Maybe it is someone who went back to drinking. Maybe it is someone who, did something at work that they shouldn't. And they don't deal with it, and the problem keeps coming up. That's a pattern. You've got to face that. Say it's something that's not in their realm of control, and someone passes. You lose someone, you have a setback in your health, whatever it may be. If you've been doing everything that you can every day to the best of your ability, and these hurdles just happen, they're accidents, something happens, but you embrace it. The sooner you embrace it and realize it and deal with it, the sooner you can go forward. So take a player playing a game, has a setback in the game, does something wrong. Instead of denying that they did something wrong and they're just like, yeah, let me see the film. Let me look at this. What did I do? And they change it in real time. They get back on the court faster and now they're better. But in life, we do it opposite. It's like we push off trying to get feedback for as long as we can, as if like hiding it under the carpet is going to make it better. It's coming out at some point. And every time you push it down, you don't get better. And if we're all trying to be our best and reach greatness, we've got to deal with it, which means embrace it.
So true. I think that I've seen, and even myself, right? There's been multiple times in my life where, you avoid it, or you mask it in some way, shape, or form, right? And you try to run from it almost. Like to your game tape example, it's like, I won't watch the game tape, right? I don't want to watch it, because it's not comfortable, right?
That's right.
We're in a very uncomfortable position going and watching, even me on social media sometimes, if there's a clip or something I said I don't like or whatever, it takes a lot in me to go back and rewatch that, right? I'm like, I really don't want to rewatch that, I know I'll get better if I do, but I really don't want to, right? And it is so true. You have to literally embrace it.
You have to embrace the suck, and then the principle that's ahead a little bit, I think it's like chapter 7, but that's seek and apply feedback. But these go hand in hand. And I say all the time, like I just said, if the pros are watching film in real time to make real time change, why in business are we only doing once a year performance reviews? We should be doing that far more often. And the more that you do it, the more comfortable you get. And by the way, you're not seeking and applying feedback from someone on Twitter that doesn't even know you. You're doing it from trusted sources. And I want to take this step further. One, if you're at work, film some of the things you're doing so you could see how you're delivering. 2, the other thing is work and life. Ask people, this is accepting and applying feedback. Hey, what's it like working with me? Ask your family member, what's it like living with me? What's it like being married to me? Ask your friends, what's it like being a friend with me? How do I show up? You will be blown away, maybe good or bad, on what you get. But if you don't know, how do you change? Sports, we make everyone's making everyone better in sports because when we have the data, we use the data right away to make us better. But in real life, people don't want the data. I'm thinking, you're doing this backwards. Don't you want to have the best marriage, the best friendships, the best life? Well, then seek and apply feedback and make change in real time. It's called extreme ownership. And once you start, this is a muscle. It hurts at first, just like when you lift and you haven't lifted in a while, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sore. Well, it's the same with mental muscle. You'll feel it, but then the more you start doing it, the more you're like, okay, I got this. And it doesn't become hard. That's the thing. Hard becomes less hard when you keep putting yourself in tough positions.
Sure.
And the greats know how to do this, but most people just like being average and just like riding on this coasting mentality. And I'm telling you, coasting does not deliver results in life. You've got to do the hard things to build the muscle.
Yeah, there's an old saying that if you do the hard thing every day, your life will be easy.
Exactly.
And if you do the easy thing every day, your life will be hard. right?
The best saying.
Yeah, you've got to, and it's so true, right? At the end of the day, the people that continuously do the hard thing every day, they do live a truly phenomenal life 9 times out of 10. I mean, basically 100% of the time, right?
Yeah.
In their own version of whatever phenomenal looks like to them, you
That's
know?
right.
I'm curious when we talk about, the NBA, NHL, NFL, MLB, you talk about them, the elite, right? The people who are playing the game at a high level, and their ability to take some of what you talk about here and apply it quicker than maybe just some average person, because they're literally a part of a team where they have to, right? Like their team members, they're going to tell them if they're not performing, or like when they're sitting down, the coach, you're going to come in, somebody's going to come in and hold them to a high standard. But I've also heard you talk about, people that you've coached, you didn't name a couple, but you gave them fake names in the book. What have you found with these types of people? What is it that typically throws that level of person off their game? And how does that level of person get back on their game? Because
Right.
I feel like, they must really have to get thrown off their game or be confused in some way, to not be able to bounce back. You see people where like I would look at them. I think you gave an example of a singer on stage, right? And you went up there and the things that she was struggling with, nobody in the audience would have ever known, right?
Absolutely.
And I think we assume when we watch, a game on the weekend or whatever, that all these people, they just all have it together, right? All the time, So yeah, the question is, what will get them off their game? And then how does somebody like that get back on their game?
So I just want everyone to remember they're human. Like they're human just like everyone else. The reason they're in the arena they're in is because they were consistent, disciplined, determined. They had a gift that allowed them, but then they honed that gift every day.
Hey, really quick, I'm sure you already know, but I've done over 2,500 wholesale deals in my career, and me and my team consistently do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals a day. If you're looking to get better at wholesaling, or maybe you're brand new, you've never wholesaled a deal, I would actually love to coach you. I would love to mentor you, and I would love for you to be a part of our education program. All you have to do is go to www.flippinsimple.com, or you can find a link in the description down below and book a strategy session with my team to see if you would be a good fit for our coaching program. Again, this is our exact strategy and formula of how we are actually able to go out every single day and do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals a day. Nobody's talking about what we're doing, and I really look forward to coaching you and mentoring you. So again, go to www.flippinsimple.com. Now let's just go ahead and get back to the show.
While other people were out, they were honing their gift. You don't make it to the 1% unless you're consistent. But here's what happens. You've been doing great. Then all of a sudden you get to the pros, and now everyone's great. And now what happens is everyone at some point loses their confidence. It doesn't matter who that person is in sports or business. There's something that happens because every level you go requires more from you, which causes you to potentially start doubting. When you get paid more, you're still the same person, but when you get put $250 million to your name, now it's like, oh man, I got to show up. And it's like, you've been showing up. That's why you got the amount. Don't put that extra pressure. But then there is pressure where, in the sense of, it is leadership. You are being called up. And every time you get called up, there's a new level of you that's got to show up. That's why mental skills work is so important. This is not just sports, this is business. When I get the vice president that goes to C-level, the C-level who becomes the CEO, we're working through some of the same things. So everyone loses confidence at some point. Everyone starts to have doubt. But what happens is they have a team of people around them ready to help them. So for everyone listening right now, they put people around them to bounce back faster, to help them get back in the game. Everyone listening needs to put people around them. So when they start to go through this, they have their own maybe personal board of directors. If it's in the relationship, go to someone who has a great marriage and say, hey, we're struggling with this. How do you help me with this? If it's in finances, if it's in personal development, but have those people you can go to. So when the moment comes, and it will, where you might be questioning what you're doing, if you should stay on the same path, you have people that could pour back into you. Maybe even be a coach that says, like, let's go back. Let's look at all the data. Okay, did you trip up? What do we need to change? Oh, by the way, this happened, but don't forget, let's look back at your scouting card. Look at all the things you're really good at. don't forget this. And let's start harnessing the things that we need to. Maybe stay agile, get rid of some things, but you start helping them build the mental awareness of what they need to shift and what they need to keep, what they could get better at, and not forgetting who they are. Everyone sometimes forgets because we're trying to get approval. Honestly, at the end of the day, everyone wants approval from somewhere outside of them. That's why I hope everyone at some point comes back to faith, because then you're not seeking an external validation from a human. I mean, hello, if we haven't looked at the opinions of people, they said Oprah Winfrey was not good. They said Walt Disney wasn't creative, that we look at all the Michael Jordan, his coach. Well, his coach sat him because he wasn't bringing enough to the table, but that's another story. My point is people have opinions, and sometimes opinions are wrong. They're opinions. They're not facts. So trying to get people to rely on God and rely on belief in themselves and what they're called to do helps you not need that approval, which will help you doubt less. I mean, look at Coach Prime right now. Yeah. Prime time. Coach for Colorado. I mean, Deion Sanders, he is amazing. One, he has faith. Two, he believes in himself, and he's done the work mentally. So he's like, what am I worried about? I'm worried about what other people think? No, I'm going to do my best and be prepared. Then we deal with the results after that. But that's a belief system.
You talk about everybody loses their confidence at some point, right?
Yes.
And I actually find that fascinating. I think I've actually been there already a time or two, at least in my life, you know? And you talk about it, and the way I've always thought about it is that every ceiling, you have a new floor.
That's right.
Right? And I love what you said about, the guy who's doing good, and he gets a big contract, whatever, 20 million, I can't remember the number you used.
250
million, right? And I wonder, have you dealt with a lot of guys, in business and in the arena, in the game, right? That have dealt with imposter syndrome? Is that a commonality that'll creep in on people? And where does that come from? And how do you? Because I've dealt with that even in my life, right? You almost feel for some reason there's these certain points in life, right, where you get to a level and you're like, should I really be at the level I'm at? But it's obviously I got here. Yeah. How do people, and how have you coached people to deal with that?
This happens a lot, more than people realize. But again, I just did a video on this morning, but when you are growing in your profession, you're looking ahead, you're driven, you have a vision. When you're driving a car, you want to look forward, right? What happens every time you look away because you're comparing yourself to someone else. What are they doing? How did they get there? What's happening? It's taking you off of your path going forward. This is distracting you. This is looking ahead. Imposter syndrome is a distraction. It's taking you from going, oh, maybe I'm not good as that one, which means you're comparing. Now you're taking yourself out of your sweet spot, your flow state, everything, because you're worried about them instead of worrying about where you're called to, the people you're supposed to be helping or serving. So a player that keeps getting distracted, well, look at that person's stat. Look over there. I said, every time you do that, we've just lost mental focus. Now we have to get back aligned to get you back into flow state. But when you stay focused and you keep just working on you're your only competition. You. The person you were yesterday, the person you were this morning, that's your only competition. And if everyone just keeps focused on making themselves better, imposter syndrome goes down. People have asked me all the time, how do you walk in some of the rooms you walk in? Which, by the way, I'm 5'2", and I'm around people who are 7 foot all the time, or I'm in Washington, D.C., I'm teaching in Italy. I'm in spaces and places that, from my parents' eyes, they would have thought, this is, I can't believe our daughter's there, right? But I could feel confident walking in, and they always knew something because they would say, this girl's going to go change the world. My mom would say this all the time, but I stay in my lane, meaning I only talk about the things that I'm confidently gifted in. I'm not getting on the show talking to you about mortgages,
right?
Talking to you about physics, talking to you about, things that I'm not gifted in. I'm coming to you, and I could stand on any stage, be in any locker room or boardroom, and share the gifts that I've been working on. Preparation leads to confidence. And I have a God confidence because if he brought me there, then I'll see it through. But I also have a confidence that I prepared to be there. Because if you don't prepare to be where you are, well, of course you're going to have insecurities. And then insecurities speak, and then that takes you out of flow state. So create, prepare, work on it, stay consistent, and then hone your gift really well. So then when you're called, an opportunity comes, you're ready. By the way, if you trip up, if you mess up on a speech, if something doesn't go, just say, okay, that's a learning situation. That's not failure. I just learned. It's all in how you reframe it and see it. See, this is where mental skills work for me comes in handy because anytime something happens, I go, okay, well, how are we going to reframe this?
Yeah.
So setbacks don't hold me back as long. I mean, if 3 strokes can't hold me back, something I trip up on, that's certainly not going to hold me back.
Sure.
But again, it's because of experience and reframing. But everyone has access to this. It's just, are they willing to do it?
Right. I think I heard it was either in your book or in a podcast where you delivered a speech and they cut your time in half.
Yes.
You were allotted to have a certain amount of time. You were prepared to have that amount of time to land it and do what you needed to do. And right before you're about to go up, they cut your time in half. And the way that I think you described it, correct me if I'm wrong, is that bothered you for a little while.
Yeah.
And you couldn't get over the fact that you really thought you messed it up, right? And then I think at one point you talk about you had to like reframe it in your mind and completely move on, right? And how did you actually do that?
So the example that you're talking about is exactly, I was ready to give this speech and all of a sudden I get on and they cut it in half and I felt like I could not land the plane. Like I could not get the final points down the way I wanted. And I've delivered so many speeches that I know how to bring it home. And I couldn't bring it home. And because I have this level of excellence, like everything I do, I want it to be great, and I want people to benefit from it. And I feel like it didn't deliver that. And man, did that eat me up at night. I was like, darn, like what if you had changed this? And for that moment, I sat there and I said, you've got to turn the page. You've got to reframe this and say, I couldn't land it. I tried to send an email saying, hey, do you want me to put a video out to everyone that was there to say the last 3 points? They're like, no, it's okay.
Yeah.
And they're like, it actually was fine. I go, no, fine is not the quality that I'm going for. Great is what I'm going for. But I had to let it go and say, that was a situation that all of a sudden, as I'm walking onto stage, came out of my control. I did the best that I could with what I had. And then I had to accept it. But you know what I did? I'm prepared now so that anytime I get on, if I get pulled, I know exactly how to do it. So what did it do? It taught me to be more agile. I was prepared, but I needed to be more agile. And then I had to turn the page because we all do this where we'll beat ourselves up for something that we'd like, man, that game could have been better. That presentation could have been better. And then you get to the point, take the feedback you need from it and move on.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're staying in the past. And again, I can't drive forward if I keep looking in the rearview mirror.
And I think a lot of people struggle with that, right? I think,
For sure.
You look at perfectionism and analysis paralysis and the idea of wanting to be so good, because it can be a catch-22, right? What you're talking about, And I think there's an art to, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we talk about the art of bouncing back.
Yeah.
I think there's also an art to like, okay, I can only be as good as I can be. And then at a certain point, I can't, like, it goes back to almost what you're talking about, staying in your own lane, right? It's like, yeah, there might be somebody else out there better than me, and I've got to be careful. There's like a really fine line of like, okay, I've got to be as good as I could possibly be, but at the same time, that is the most good I can be also, right? And how do you walk that line, right? Like,
This is good.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So first, this is what comes to mind that I want to share. It's called Go Ugly Early. So there's this example I teach people in leadership, which is there's a point where you've just got to start. Perfectionism could hold us up because it's like, it's not perfect. We can't get that out, this project. And listen, if I didn't start speaking, I would never have gotten better at speaking. I had to start. My first proposal, when I started my practice and my first, I look at my keynotes on Apple that I made, like my first flyer and presentation that I had to do myself when I first started to, what's created now. It was ugly back then, but what did it do? It got me out of the gate. I can't get better till I get out of the gate. the player can't get better till they get time on the court, right? Or the ice or the field. The same with us. We've got to just get out there, get started, take the feedback so we can get better. You can't get better unless you start, and perfectionism will hold you up. So be prepared, do the best you can, go with it, try it, and then if it didn't go well, make it better, learn from it. So there's that level of, I just wanted to say, like, go ugly early, remember that, and just get started. And then, like we were just talking, be the best you can at what you can do. And then you have to say, you could sleep at night going, did I lay everything on the field? Did I lay everything in that meeting? Like right now for this podcast, this show, I have no idea what's going on in the world. It doesn't matter to me because all I care about is right now. That's the thing that helps people get in flow state and show up great, is when they're present. Presence is key to mental conditioning and greatness in life. Oftentimes we get depressed because we're stuck in the past, or we're anxious because we're worried about the future. When you do either of those things, you have completely taken yourself out of the present moment where joy is, or where the opportunity to create greatness is, or to find opportunity.
Sure.
So you've got to look up, show up, and be present to play the play in your life.
Yeah, I was interviewing somebody not that long ago, and he was talking about, be where your feet are.
Yes.
At the end of the day, wherever your feet are, you have to be there, right? And if you do that, then you'll obviously, like you're talking about, you'll be in that flow. You can actually be great in every area that you're in that moment, right? And I think it's obviously super powerful. I love the idea of like the players and talking through, the different things that they've struggled with. And I remember you talking. There was a story where you were peeling back the onion of a player that was saying, I think something to the effect, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that every time they went to a particular state
City.
or a particular arena or city, right,
Yep.
they just didn't play well, right? And I want you to obviously tell the story, but you had to peel back a bunch of different layers to get to the root problem, and I don't believe it actually had anything to do with what they thought it had to do with, right?
Yeah.
But I think and I think this will apply to anybody watching or listening, and it isn't just in sports. It could be in any area of life. How did you peel back that onion with them?
So what you're talking about is there's a professional soccer player that I work with, and every time he would go to a certain city, this particular city, he could not stand it, and then he played well. And so what he built up in his head is he's like, I don't even like the smell when I get to the hotel. I don't like the city. Like everything about it bothers me, and then I play poorly. I said, well, you've just teed yourself up to continue to play poorly because you are feeding yourself, and what you focus on, you feel, and then what you feel ends up becoming your outcome. So he kept setting up that this is where I play poorly, and then that's where he'd play poorly. Same happens just randomly, by the way, but every time I hear a player say, like, that city I play great in, they play great in. Why? Because it's what they focused in belief system. So what we did for him is I said to him, hey, here's a song I want you to play. It was a specific song because Miami tripped him up. So I said, I want you to play Welcome to Miami by Will Smith.
Yeah.
I want you to put it on. I want you to wear your best suit. I want you to put on your cologne. I want you to walk in where they're like, damn, we want him on our team. You just show up with confidence. You shift your mindset. I taught him all the things that we need to. We went over reframing, like making sure he was confident again. And he's an amazing player. And I said, when you show up to Miami, it's like the whole crowd is chanting for you. And you play that song where they're welcoming you into Miami. As soon as we reframed how he saw the place, how he showed up, he played the best game. He literally just, again, was back in Miami and crushed the record. So
wow.
We've broken the mental barrier that he put with it. But this is important for anyone listening. We put those barriers based on, it could be a type of person. Every time you see this type of person, you're like, I don't know, I just don't like them. They remind you of something that triggered you because you have a pain point from something. That person has nothing to do with someone in your past, but because they look like them, now you don't like them. I see this all the time. So we put up mental barriers because of old pain points that then hold us hostage to never thriving. It could be a city. You're like, someone could be like, oh, I don't like going to Nashville because they had their heart broken there. It's not Nashville. It's the mental pain that you haven't fixed. Yeah. So then that triggers you. So whatever that is, you've got to work on the pain that caused you that so you could heal from it so it no longer does that. And then go recreate a memory in the city, place, space, or whatever that hurt you. Create it better. Make it better. Create a new neurological tape in your head so that it no longer holds you back anymore.
So powerful. I love that. I'm bouncing around a little bit here, but you said so many things that we have to dive into, because that goes back, by the way, to embracing the suck, right? Which is facing it.
Yep.
And actually not putting the barrier up and having some weird association with a particular thing or place or whatever, right? You were talking a little while ago about public speaking, right? And the idea that when you delivered your very first ever speech, from where you were at then to where you're at now is obviously massively different, right? Well, and I'm sure public speaking is, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, number 1 or number 2 fear in the world. I think maybe number 2. I think number 1 is like heights, right? And when we talked in the beginning of the podcast a little while ago, we were talking about being judged and the idea of people judging us. When we look at a fear like that, because I'm just curious, I think people fall down in areas like this and they can never figure out how to bounce back, right? For you, it was going through, the strokes, right? And you mentioned like, okay, once you had gone through 1 stroke, 2, 3, somewhere along the way, it dawned on you that every day could be my last day and I'm going to live every gosh dang day like it's my last.
Yeah.
And there's like songs about that, right? But, other people listening maybe haven't gone through that level of traumatic experience to have that mindset. How does somebody like that face maybe a fear like, let's just say public speaking, for example, when they still do have the fear of being judged or they have the fear of, what people might think of them or whatever, and they don't have the thing that you have working for you that was ultimately very traumatic, but is there a way for them? Is there a route forward for them?
I have a perfect example for that. I had this amazing executive that was asked to be on a board. And to be on this board, though, this person needed to be the face of the board and had to do major speeches, with world-renowned people. And the executive came to me and said, I can't take this board seat because I can't get up there and speak. I'm so nervous. And this is a very seasoned executive. And I said, you're placing too much pressure on yourself right now. And you're worried about what people are thinking about you. I said, let me back up for a second with you. And her daughter was 14 years old. I said, if your daughter had a life-threatening disease and you had to get up to speak to people about it so that we could find a cure, would you do it? She said, absolutely. I said, okay, listen to that. I said, when I put the onus on it was because you had to deliver a message to save a life, you were like, no problem, your daughter. Prior to that, you just were like, well, I have to speak. But this board seat is going to help save lives. You have to take the pressure off of people thinking they're going to be looking at you and looking at as by you getting up, you're going to be sharing a message that could save other lives. Move it off of we and me and put it to we. As soon as I shifted her mindset to, you're so worried about what people think about you instead of about the gift and the message that you're about to deliver and what it's going to do, that it's holding you back. The moment we reframe that and you get up there, knowing you're getting up there not because you're supposed to be the most acclaimed speaker at this moment, you're supposed to get up there to deliver a message so it could help save lives.
Yeah.
She's like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it. Same going up there for anyone delivering speeches. I mean, for every level I go, the stages keep getting bigger that I speak on. And they keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger in arenas. And that could easily throw me off my game if I go, oh my gosh, now it's, this many thousand and this many thousand. And I'm with this person. And I just go, hold up, wait a minute. I'm just going up there to be me, to deliver a gift and a message, and I make everyone feel like they're in the living room with me. It doesn't matter if it's an arena that I'm speaking in. I just remember that I'm sharing a gift with people and a message that's going to help them. I'm not getting up there to say, what do they think about me? Because now that's self-serving, and that's going to put me in a wrong place. And of course I'm going to have fear. But the moment anyone goes to, hey, I've prepared, I've done my work, I've practiced, I'm going to get up there and I'm going to share a gift with people. Now the pressure is off in a different way, and you'll deliver better and you'll be in flow state. So that's how you move out of fear and into confidence.
Hey, real quick, I don't know if you know, but I have a totally separate YouTube channel that you probably haven't checked out before. And it's just called Austin Zaback. And I've actually started a new series on that channel where I break down wholesale deals, okay? Wholesale deals that we've done in our business. And I show you step by step how we got the deal, how we sold the deal. I break down all the numbers on the deal, and I even show you the HUD of the deal, so you know we're not playing around. Now, I don't know how long you've been following me, but I do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals every single day. And my goal is to get to 100 deal breakdowns on that YouTube channel. So definitely, if you haven't already, go check it out. I'll link it down in the description below. And without further ado, let's just go ahead and get back to the show. Seems like the majority of some of the problems when it comes to things like that are as a result of us thinking about us.
Always.
Right.
Everything in life. I promise you, people are not thinking about us as much as we think they are.
Right. And you hear that, right?
Yeah.
You know, people don't care at the end of the day. I think there's an old speaking coach out there that talks about, like, you think that when you're up there, people are thinking about you, and they're just thinking about themselves at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely.
But you know, the fix to that is if we can think about other people, then a lot of our problems aren't even problems anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
Truly, so much of life is we get so caught up in our head. There was a point where one time my schedule is so busy that someone was like, "Hey, are you mad at me?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And they're like, "Well, I haven't heard from you in a while." I'm like, "I've been in like 15 states and like, I don't know how many weeks." I go, "I'm just in the zone." And I'm like, when I get back, we'll be able to see each other. But they were thinking I was mad, but it's because they were like, "Well, our last interaction, I said something and I felt like maybe it didn't come across." And I'm thinking, I didn't hear any of that. They were in their head, in their insecurities, worried about something that wasn't even true. And it caused them such distress that wasn't even there.
Yeah.
So it's like, one, always communicate. It will always never fill a story unless you talk to someone, because we fill stories in our head with things that are not true.
Yep.
But the other thing too is just know people are busy. People are doing things. Like, they're not worried about the things that you're probably thinking they're worried on. And if you really are worried, call them. Don't sit there with it. Call it and talk it out. And then you move on.
I love that so much. And obviously we'll want people to buy the book, so we won't go into every detail of the book. But I do want to, I know we talked really about like embracing the suck as it pertains to the book. And also a couple of the other things that we've definitely talked about. I want to talk really quick about understanding who you are.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because I think that's like, you know, even me in my life, like I think there's been times where I'm like, who the heck am I? You know, what do I stand for? Like, what am I doing here, right? And I think that would be really helpful to people. So maybe you can share a tidbit of kind of what your message is about there.
This is important because, again, everyone goes to where they're doubting themselves. They forget who they are. They sometimes think like, should I give up? When honestly, no, you shouldn't. You just have to lean back into your gifts. So getting them to understand who they are in this chapter, I take people through like a scouting card, and I call it the confidence card. And so this is where I get people to write down what they're good at. And this becomes their confidence card. And then I have them go out and seek from 2 to 3 to 5 people and say, hey, if you were to describe who I was to coach, what would you say? And then they get back this feedback. And guess what? There's parallels from all the people that wrote similar words. And we put that on their confidence card of who they are. So when they hit, adversity or something that causes them to doubt themselves, I go back to your confidence card. What is it that you're good at? This didn't get taken away from you. And that's how we establish some confidence with them, by going back to, hey, this is why you were recruited here. This is why you're here. This is why you're in this place that you're at, because you had the skills to bring you here. Don't let this setback take away your confidence just because it was a bad game, a bad presentation. Maybe even your company didn't work out. It might have been the situation, the people, whatever it is, but it doesn't mean that you can't get back up. I mean, that's the greatest thing about being an entrepreneur. This doesn't work. Try it again. Try it somewhere else. But when you get people to understand their hard wiring, their DNA, like some people are really gifted in detail. Some are better visionaries. Lean into your hard wiring, then lean into the things that you are really good at, And then when you start looking at this and you look at, okay, this is my hard wiring, this is what I'm good at, this is what I'm passionate about, and you see this, you go, okay, well, this is where I can meet the world's needs. This is where I could show up confidently. I can't turn around and say, well, you know what? I'd really like to be a WNBA player. I'm 5'2". That's never happening. I can't lean into that, but I could lean into, boy, I could go coach them in the NBA, WNBA, NHL, doesn't matter. I could certainly help them because I could help them with mindset. Now I could lean into that. You get insecure when you step out of your gifts and talents.
Right.
Insecurity shows up really big when you're trying to be something you're not. So be confident in who you are, show up authentically as you. And by the way, this is a side note because I am coaching. It can't just be like, well, this is who I am, deal with it. No, no, no. Is this the best version of you? Because you could be direct and bold and rip people's head off and be like, that's how I am. No, absolutely not. That's not how you show up in the world. But you could be direct and bold with emotional intelligence and lead people better when you do.
Yeah.
So understanding your hard wiring also helps you understand and have emotional intelligence too.
Sure. I think a lot of people are miserable because, and even in business, I think in business it's actually harder for maybe people to tell, like, obviously, like the 5'2" example with the WNBA is a very simple and easy way to kind of be like, oh, I wouldn't be good for that, right?
Yeah.
But I think in business, it can be camouflaged a bit more. And I think I remember you talking at one point about when you were running the 4 companies, like you thought that you were really good at the things that you were doing, but in all reality, like you were kind of somewhat, I don't necessarily want to say miserable, but you weren't enjoying what you were doing, right?
I was put in roles that I shouldn't be in the certain role, or I was taking on, like, for sure leading, but then, you know, running operations day to day it was a record label, one of them. I was like, why am I running operations? You know, I should be, when I was actually helping people. I was doing the role, but I shouldn't be in certain positions that my gifts and talents are not there. And that's how you start to get miserable real quick. And, you know, I remember a very well-known car company called me to be COO of their company, which would have had great perks and great benefits and great pay. And I said to them, no, I can't do it. And they're like, why? And I was like, I can't say yes to this role because it doesn't allow me to awaken greatness. It doesn't allow me to pull people's gifts out of them to be better. It's more operational, and that's not my gifts. Now, the reason I could have confidently said it then, because I already done the work. I had already figured out what my mission was, my why was, aligned with it, cut out things that didn't align with it. Like, I'd already done this work and taught this work, so when the opportunity came, I was so much more prepared than I was when I was in my 20s.
Sure.
So you learn as you go, but again, I'm giving you these principles to kind of get ahead, learn from my mistakes.
Yeah. I love that. You know, and I love in particular what you said, because I think if people can't figure it out on their own, like if you're looking in the mirror and you truly have some confusion about what you're phenomenal at, it goes back to what you're talking about. Ask the people around you.
Absolutely.
Right? And get them to tell you, hey, I think you even mentioned send an email to 5 people.
Yes.
And kind of all different types of people in your life that you interact with differently, and have them tell you what they see you phenomenal at, right? And it might surprise you that they actually see something different than maybe what you think you're good at, right?
Yes, yeah. Here's something too. You might be thinking you're putting out one way, and then you get back all this feedback. You're like, gosh, I didn't know that's how people see me for good. Or maybe you wish they saw more in you that you know's in there. And that just might be an awakening of you're not showing up to the world in that manner. So sometimes we think we're coming across a certain way, or we hope to, but that's not how people see us. All of this is giving you such good feedback. And we're all living the best 30 for 30 in our lives. And so if you want this 30 for 30 to be great, one, it's going to mean you're going to have to overcome adversity. No 30 for 30 has ever been good without someone having to overcome something. But the other thing is, you're the director. You literally are the producer of your show. If you don't like what's happening and how this movie is going, start changing it now.
I love that. Talk to me just for a minute just about the why power, because I haven't heard it put the way that you've put it before. I mean, obviously, you know, we hear motivational people talk about like figure out your why, right? But I feel like you kind of describe it just slightly different than maybe other people do.
This is coming from a neuroscience background, and I believe, like, I love Simon Sinek, and he's all about the why. But what I wanted people to understand is the ability to endure requires a why. And that needs power in it. And so I came up with this why power over willpower. So we could only will ourselves so many times through things where we're eventually not going to be able to will ourselves one day to get up and go work out. Like our will's like, you know what, I'd rather hit the snooze button and sleep in. But if you have a why like I do, which is I want to awaken greatness and I don't want another stroke, like I'm driven by something bigger to be at my best so that I can be here as long as I can, as healthy as I can. So I have to, this morning, it was teetering on like whether I was going to be able to fit in that workout. And quickly I was like, heck yes. Like you don't give yourself these breaks because as soon as I start putting cracks in the foundation, then tomorrow could go down the next day. And I want to stay healthy. So I have got to go work out. So for example, when I work with anyone, I say, you need a why to endure. So I have an executive that I said, you're about to grow this company to 20 billion. They're at 10 billion, 20 billion's the next. Why are you going to endure some of the growth pains that we know is going to happen going to that level? What are you going to need to endure? Because will getting up, will working through holidays, will all of that is not going to endure. And so he turns around and he says, because I want to know at the end, I added immense value to people's lives. So he said, we took that further. And so adding value became his why power. He goes, I just want to show up in this world knowing, did I add value in people's lives? So when I walk in the door, did I add value to my wife's life? When I walk in the door, did I add value to my kid's life? When I walk into Starbucks and someone's standing in front of me and they want to have a conversation, did my words add value to their life? He said by doing this exercise, it allowed him to become so intentional about how he shows up that the company is growing immensely. And he has such a drive, a why, because he wants to leave it where he adds so much value to the people in the company that when he leaves, he made his mark. He left a legacy. But we do these exercises because it gives people the ability to have so much more intention every day in showing up. So why power gives you that ability to endure. It gives you focus every day. It gives you the proper intention on how you want to show up. A player that I'm working with right now, theirs is inspiring greatness. Whether however many minutes they get to play, they want to know that when they show up in the locker room, in the community, that they're inspiring greatness to everyone around them.
Wow.
So this person's already had setbacks with injuries. They still got to inspire greatness. So you could see when you start to create this anthem and this theme, this why, it will fuel you way more than your own will be able to.
Sure. You know, obviously, we have a lot of entrepreneurs, CEOs, business people that watch the show, you know, in every spectrum of every industry, right? You know, you've coached Fortune 100, Fortune 500, you know, high-level executives, CEOs, entrepreneurs, owners, you know. What would you say the number one struggle is if you had to find a commonality of what all of the highest performing CEOs and entrepreneurs, when it might be mentally or whatever, you know, is there any commonality that you see over and over and over again that people struggle with that they have to figure out a way to actually bounce back from?
This is multifaceted because one, I will tell you, the same goes for everyone. At some point, they get imposter syndrome and they lose their confidence. Even the best of the best, because all of a sudden I've had a top level executive CEO that I'm working with, and they were in the room with other presidents, former presidents of the country. And all of a sudden they're like, what am I doing here? And I said, you're here because of the work that you've done. And it was like, almost like they didn't feel worthy. And I was like, hold up. You created this in the world. You have all the worth to be here. You were called here. But my point is this is someone that if anyone knew, they'd be like, no way. They were in a room and they were like, I don't belong here. But as soon as they were with people that all of a sudden they looked bigger than them, they felt like they were bigger than them. They were presidents of our country. Yes, they might have been president of our country. That was the role they played, but that doesn't make them any better, right? It was the role they played, but now they just shrunk their worth. So they had imposter syndrome for that hot minute. And I was like, wait a minute, we're going to reframe this real quick because you're about to speak in a room with everyone. Yeah. And so that's one part, meaning that people will walk in rooms for sure, everyone at some point, and go, gosh, do I belong here? Because they just elevated where they are. Their life took them to another level. And by the way, that next level just means that it's a great level to play in, because when you're around people better than you, then you get to rise. And greatness is not by what you acquire or position, but it means, do you take opportunities and make them so great that how you live inspires someone else to want to act like that too? So you have to reframe that. One. The other part is, I find founders and executives, which I understand this, but you're so focused on the results you have to drive, that sometimes slowing down to make sure everyone is on the same bus going with you, which means emotional intelligence, looking at how to get other people to follow the vision, requires effort from you. But when it starts growing so fast, you're like, listen, this is where we're going. This is what we have to get done. I don't have time to slow down for you all. It's like, well, you all is your company. You have to remember that these are your people. And if they're not all on the bus catching the same vision as you, you might be going at Mach 100, but they can't keep up. Your bus isn't going anywhere. This plane is not flying. So you have to get them to work on their emotional intelligence to say, hold up, I've got to make sure that I'm working as equally as hard on myself as well as with these people to make them my people, our people, to get bought into the vision on where we're going. Because every entrepreneur and every founder, it's yours. It's your baby. You are going to think about it more than your employees. Your employees do not lose sleep like you do.
Yeah.
And I get them all the time going, do they not understand this? I go, no, not all of them. They check out at 5. You don't. But you have to understand there's certain people that just are not going to buy into the level that you have. This is your baby. You've lost, you've sold, you've done everything to get where you are today. So what do you do to help them to buy in? We have to find out what makes others tick so that the whole engine's going forward here. And so getting people to understand emotional intelligence, human behavior, how to get thousands. I mean, one of my mentor, he was the former Secretary of the Navy. He had to oversee 1 million people.
Wow.
How do you get 1 million people to all go in the same direction? You have to care. You have to care so much about those people. And you have to help them, and you have to get to know your top leaders so that then those top leaders pour into the next level of leaders. And that's how you start to become one unit. And you have to make it clear, concise, and simple. The more complex you make it, the harder it is for it to really create size and to grow. So keep it clear.
It's got to be duplicatable.
It's got to be duplicatable and simple. We make things way too complex.
We do. We really do. We overcomplicate everything.
Yes.
In your experience, obviously, and then we'll wrap up here shortly, and I'll let you go. With athletes, I understand that certain people are born with the height or the physical component that eventually will make them great. If we remove that factor, though, I'm curious as to your opinion. So aside from like height or like, I guess maybe just like height, right? Are people born, because I always am curious, right?
Okay.
Whether it be, entrepreneurs, business people, athletes, again, aside from the physical characteristic, are people born with it, or is it acquired over time? The greatness aspect of it, right? When you look at the great CEOs, entrepreneurs, athletes, were they born with that gift, or did they acquire that gift throughout their childhood? Did they continue to bounce back their entire life? Did they have the grit and the resilience, or was it innate the day they were born?
I definitely think greatness is open to all but earned by few. And I believe that happens because you have seen some people that they may not have been the most talented, but they're great now. The example I'm going to give to you for sure has height in it, so I know this isn't a fair apples to apples, but I just started watching the Shaq documentary. He's very tall, but he was not good. He literally was not good when he started. He had size, but he got so mentally locked in on how to be better that he was able to use his size, which was almost clumsy for him, to use, because he was like, well, if I'm going to be there, I'm going to be the darn best. And so he worked after it every day. His parents also put in him principles that for sure helped his foundation. But my point is he wasn't like someone that, he's 7 something, he must be great. No, he had to work for that. He had to work for that to match up. But again, take size out. I have worked with so many people that maybe might not have been the most talented, but because they were consistent and they honed their craft, they got really good at one specific area that made them great. And I will say that often it's their mindset that makes them great, which is obviously why I'm passionate about what I do. But I mean, I've been doing this 27 years, and I could tell you from the moment in the hospital when I saw someone coming out of coma, I had to tell the whole team in one meeting with them how quickly they would recover.
Wow.
And that would cover their whole stay based on my assessment. But I watched it all their nonverbal. I watched their mindset. I watched the mindset of the people around them. And if it was bad, I knew it was going to take a lot longer because they were negative. They were in the victim role.
Hey, real quick, I don't know if you know, but I actually wholesale real estate nationwide, and I have buyers all over the nation looking for incredible deals. So if you're a wholesaler and you locked up a deal and you're struggling to find a buyer, I would love to partner with you up on it, and I would love to help you sell it. All you have to do is text me 480-418-5339 and just let me know that you have a deal that you need help selling. Again, the phone number is 480-418-5339. Let me know that you have a deal. You want me to bring a buyer. Somebody on my team will reach out to you right away, and we will help you get it sold. Now, let's just go ahead and get back to the show.
Same goes with us. As soon as I meet with someone, anyone I meet with, if I find that they are stuck in old patterns, I'm like, this is going to take a lot longer, and they may not reach their full potential because they're holding themselves back.
Wow.
But the greats win the mental game. That's what also makes them great. Not just their talent, but their mental game.
Yeah. And do you think that adversity plays a big role? Like you see, one commonality. We're on episode almost 100 here of this particular podcast.
Congrats.
And thank you. I've watched, thousands of podcasts. From Lewis Howes to Ed Milet to Joe Rogan to Lex Friedman to Diary of a CEO. Every podcast you can imagine, right? And the biggest commonality that I've noticed is that the people that achieve the greatest things in life are the very people that have been through some of the hardest things in life.
Absolutely. Adversity is a muscle. So when they find they hit hard times, they're like, this isn't hard anymore because you've gone through it early. That's why I want everyone listening that has children, do not take the obstacles away from your children. If you remove the obstacles, they will not know how to be resilient. You will be handicapping them. You will be making them weaker, not stronger. I know you think you're serving them, but you're hurting them if you don't allow them to fight the battles, to figure out how to do it. Now, you could be alongside with them, but when they're going through something, ask them, how do you want to handle this? What should you do? And you know what? One of the players that I work with now, his mom would say, you need to figure that out. And his whole life, she just said, you figured out. You got yourself in this, get yourself out of it. He's so darn resilient because he had to figure it out. So yes, adversity is a gift. That's why we were saying in the beginning, hard is good for us. Do not back away from difficult conversations, from trying something that's a little bit stretching you beyond your comfort zone. Lean into adversity. Don't run away from it because it's the very thing that's going to make you go from good, better, to the best.
I'm obviously, we're both people of faith, but I'm almost at a point where I believe that the more adversity that we have, the greater the calling.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Like when I talk to people and I see what people are going through, even like what I go through, you go through, right? Like I can almost see in real time. I'm like, oh, you've got a big calling in your life.
Yeah.
So
much so that even with this book, that's what my agent said, because I was like, I'd already gone through enough prior to writing this book. And then when I wrote the book, oh my gosh, I can't even begin to tell you all the obstacles that were thrown at my way. And she was like, you're getting tested because this is about to literally catapult you to a whole nother level again. And so it's like a test for you, is what you're writing you could handle, and you do. And I was like, son of a b.
Oh, man.
And so for sure I did. But I even lost my dad in the middle of writing this, and so much stuff was going on. Even health scares came back, all this stuff. And I was like, really? But then I thought, yeah, really? Because you could write about this, but can you keep showing up doing the work? And yeah, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
And so, yes, adversity is going to keep coming, but it's the very thing that keeps advancing us. And for every test we get, it does give us a really good testimony. So turn it for good.
Yeah. Well, and you wouldn't have to bounce back if you never fell down, right?
Yeah.
The book wouldn't
Seriously.
even be, I mean, we wouldn't even, you wouldn't have a book.
I know.
You know? So, I mean, it's just the very nature of life.
It is. It is.
Well, I want to get you out of here soon, so I have a final question. This might be difficult for you.
Okay.
Because you're a plethora of knowledge and wisdom, obviously. But if you had to, everything you've done, 27 years, I mean, everything you've ever learned, read everything you've ever taught, the whole shebang, and you had to just put like a billboard up and everybody in the world could see that billboard, or you had to give one piece of advice to your family or, you know, somebody on the street, but it could just be one piece of advice. I mean, what would, if you had to boil it down to one thing that you've truly lived your life by? And it can't be the title of your book. No. I'm just kidding.
No.
It can't be. What would that be?
This may sound cliche, but the game's never over. It's never over. Like, you still have so much within you. There's more within you. You're worth more. And like I said at the beginning, you have 100% bounce back rate. So you've overcome everything hard you've already been through in your life. What makes you think you won't get through this again? And you have a mission. Everyone has a mission. Are you willing to answer the call to see this all the way through? I hope you do, because that's going to be the greatest 30 for 30 we're ever going to watch, and I can't wait to watch your story. So keep going. Don't give up. And stay in the fight. It's worth it. Yeah.
I think one of my favorite things you've said on the podcast is you have 100% rate, right? The sheer fact that we're here and breathing oxygen means that we've overcome everything that we've ever confronted.
Right.
You know,
where do we have 100% in anything else?
Right.
Like, but we have it in that.
So crazy.
Yeah.
And if you could just remind yourself of that.
Right.
You know, when you're about to go fight that next battle, or you're in the middle of that battle, like, hey, you've won every other battle.
Right.
You're here.
Right.
You know?
Right. And you matter. I think that's just one other thing I want to say. Like, I feel like when people go through hard times, they start to feel like, do I matter? Yes, you matter. You matter in this world. Don't ever think that you're less than anything. You are made with greatness. You have greatness within you. You have a God that loves you. Like, there is so much worthiness in you, greatness in you, and so the world needs you. So never think that you don't matter. You absolutely do. And get back up and start working again every day to make yourselves great so that you can show the world what it means to get up and use your gift again. Because like Kobe Bryant says, greatness is not when you acquire it, but it's how you live that inspires someone else. Your story is going to inspire someone else. So make it great.
I love that. Wow. Mic drop. What a way to end the podcast. I really appreciate you being here. How can people find the book? And then how can they find you? How do they get a hold of you if they want to, you know, obviously read the book or just talk to you in general?
Go to Barnes & Noble or Amazon to get the book. CoachDar.com has everything that you need there, has all my social handles. Instagram's the one I'm most active on, at the Coach Dar. Yep. I put tips and tools. And then the other thing is I put out a newsletter every Thursday that is mental resiliency and tips that you can't get anywhere else. So you can go on to the website and sign up for the newsletter, but I pour into that every week. And so they're little nuggets that are going to help you every day. So connect with me on there. You could, you know, reach out to me through CoachDar.com or my social channels. And then here's the thing. I wrote this book because when people are going through hard times, you don't always know what to say. But you could share this book and say, I don't always have the right words, but this is going to help you. So this book is part of, I have a nonprofit, Global Pay It Forward. This is a pay it forward. Get it for yourself, pay it forward to someone else. This is the people's book. Like here in Arizona, we have the People's Open. This is the people's book.
I love that. Yeah, definitely buy a couple, give it to somebody.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be giving one of these copies to somebody. I have 2 copies here, so we'll be giving that to somebody probably here in my office.
Perfect.
And, I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you so much.
It was a lot of fun. Okay, thank you.